Hello and good afternoon. It is Monday, November 4th. I really almost wrote October 4th in the email this morning because I don't know. November, I have November denial every year, I think. Um, I'm here post Juicy Canada, brimming with excitement and inspiration, lots to share. And so we can get into that in this conversation. I feel like we should probably just have a nice chat about what we learned from that conference, some takeaways, and let's check in with the folks who are here. I'm going to start with Tony and then go to Jen and then anyone else who's calling in. Tony, what's going on in your world?
I'm getting ready to open up the space in December. So for those of you who weren't on the last call, got a space in Wichita, Kansas, 13,000 square feet of venue space and co-working space. Opening up again in December, maybe in January. So we're finishing construction. It's a brand new build out. It's a building we bought a couple of years ago. They just had some vacant space and decided to do co-working space. So pretty much starting everything from scratch. We've got our software I think we're getting in place. We decided to go with Office R&D. If anybody else has an opinion on software that would sway us otherwise, it was between that and Optics, and Optics didn't have very good customer support. Office R&D got back to us right away with anything that we needed, so they seem like they're on the ball and have a lot of good features in their software. So the two things that I'm looking for today would be, I noticed there's free trials that a lot of co-working spaces have. And so I was thinking about doing a 30-day trial for everything other than the private offices. We've got about 20 private offices. And so I thought about doing a free trial of 30 days. Also thought about 7 days. Also thought about 1 day. So I'm kind of playing around with that. So I'd like your guys' opinion on that. And then I'm getting the marketing together for the space. And so I've got a big digital billboard on the property. It's on a major highway. So I've got an ad that's running for pre-leasing. I've got some bandit signs, the street signs, those little corrugated signs that are going to go out in different locations. And I've got a ribbon cutting ceremony with the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to do a huge launch party. So I should have, 200 to 300 people there, I would imagine. And thinking about postcards and Facebook and Google, pay-per-click, and all kinds of different avenues. So those are the two things I guess I need is if anybody has any input on trials, and then the best avenues for marketing as far as best ROI. Looks like you're muted, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. Those are both topics we can talk more about. And I'm looking forward to doing so. So excellent. Great. And Jen, how are things with you? What have you been up to?
Oh, not much. Went to Juicy. It was awesome as always. So this is my fourth Juicy, and I have to say that most of them I come back super inspired and fired up. And this time I felt pretty overwhelmed actually, just based on some conversations I had with people and some realities I need to face. I think by Wednesday, the unconference day, like by the end of the day, I was feeling pretty heavy. So, but top of mind for me is the idea that if I'm going to open this annex building, which I'm truly not looking at as its own separate entity, but an annex, I'm going to have to form 2 more businesses to make this happen. So there's going to need to be an umbrella organization and then like a separate business for each of these 2 locations. And I'm a little freaked out about that because I'm just thinking about, okay, that's extra payroll, that's extra this, extra that, extra administration. So I actually have a call later today with the Deco Group, Liz, Christine, Benjamin. They're going to talk me down off the ledge this afternoon. So, so yeah, that's top of mind for me. What else? Couple of calls ago, we were talking about outsourcing social media marketing. Just seeing if that person's here. That did not work out. What they presented to us was extremely generic, and when I gave feedback and said, this isn't really on brand, they said, well, sorry, this is what we do at this level. And I was like, okay. So we'll be looking for another solution for that. I mean, I got more stuff on my list, but I would say that those are the two that are keeping me up at night.
Okay. Yeah, we could talk through it a little bit more. I think I hear where you're at as far as being intimidated by the implications of what you're looking to do, and we can just kind of talk through it a little bit more and see if we can get you somewhere where you're feeling better about it. So
cool.
Thanks for that. And I see we got Lucas on board now. And Lucas, you're not wearing the fancy new AirPods, are you?
Yes, I am.
You are? Oh my goodness. All right.
I like it.
Yeah?
Like it. How are you guys? Has been a while. I guess I've been here, but we had good progress here. We did finish the floor plan and everything. We should start construction in the middle of this month. It's a small space, not small, 6,000 square foot. But we're at the beginning phase and we're excited. A lot of people are excited. And I guess that for me, since I'm narrowing down more stuff, I have a similar question than Tony. What system do you guys use for the co-working? I was checking the Nexus one. And then I have more questions about printer, router, if you guys have issues, because I know printer is a big issue. So what do you guys recommend? And I think that's it for me. And Tony, I like your Tesla there.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Lucas. So we could talk a little bit more about how to approach those things as well. So I'll just make a note for us to come back to it. And very good. Okay, cool. Now we've got Kelly as well, who's not got her camera on, and Simeon. Are either of you up for saying a quick hello?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I've had trouble with my audio before, so just wanted to make sure. It's actually kind of, it's funny how these things happen with Tony bringing up the question about the free trials at the space. That's actually just something I was talking about on Friday, that we've been giving free day passes to anyone who wants to try out our space. And we had kept it limited to just one day. But we were thinking of doing away with it altogether. So I would be interested to have a more in-depth conversation about people's thoughts on that, because we feel like if someone's going to try us out, we think they would likely try us out for our day pass, which we have a pretty low rate of $20, and that the free pass isn't necessarily getting anybody in there, but we're not sure, I guess. And then it's not long enough for anyone to really feel a part of the community. So I don't know, at least right now we're thinking of trying, a few months where we don't have anything free other than a tour and see what happens. But I hadn't heard of anyone doing a free month before, Tony, but I find that interesting because, well, I don't know if we would be able to do that, but I think that could help somebody actually become more integrated into the community. I don't think we could afford to do that unless it really played out. But anyhow, that's something that is on our minds as well, and I'd be interested in talking more about. And then Jen, the structuring thing that you brought up. I'm an attorney as my paying job, and I would be curious to hear a little bit. Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for the whole group, but the having to have two separate entities I get from a structural standpoint, but generally there's still ways to integrate employment, payroll and all that, so it still functions on the back end kind of as one company. So I would just be curious to hear a little bit more about the thoughts behind some of those suggestions there, if it's appropriate for the group to be talking about that. And I am really excited to hear about what you guys, what your experience at the conference was. I felt bad I couldn't make it.
All good, Kelly. Thank you for that. And I see we've got Penny on here as well. Penny, you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be back. I think I missed a week, and then Tony, you were gone last week, and I missed the group, and I missed these conversations. So it's nice to be back. Things are going well here. Tomorrow night is our first kind of well, we've had different events, but this is the first time that we're doing like a lunch and learn, although I'm calling it a different Dive and Thrive actually. But tomorrow's going to be our first lunch and learn, and hopefully people will show up because I feel like it's going to be an important piece of what we're doing here, that whole community piece, and that part hasn't been happening a lot. So I'm hoping that that's part of what's going to start happening as we have more of these events.
Cool. And so, yeah, just let us know if there's anything you want to discuss in this call. We probably have enough, but as we circle around, we can talk about it more. But I'm glad that you're doing it. So that's a good start. Great. And anybody else? Simeon?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about you.
Excellent. My name is Simeon. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. I've been working out of co-working spaces in Nairobi for about 4 years now. And I recently made the decision to start a new co-working space, but in Mombasa, which is one of the coastal cities. So I'm a complete newbie. And I wanted to join the call as a way to plug into the community. And it looks like there's a lot of interesting ideas and things that I've really opened on my notebook. I'm sort of in the early stages of trying to figure out the perfect mix of square footage, number of desks, number of private offices, in order to maximize profitability. So and I've read a couple of resources about that, but anyone who's got some interesting thoughts about that, I'd be happy to hear. It's great to plug into this community and to meet you all.
So great. I'm so glad to have you along. Congratulations on making the decision to move this direction. And thank you for joining. And we're excited to have you here. I'd love to maybe just to tell us a little bit more about what the current status is of what you're developing. If you have a space picked out, what kind of size you're looking at, what your kind of big picture goals are. You maybe just tell us a little bit more in that direction.
Sure. So I do have a space picked out in Mombasa City. It's a fairly common part of the city, and it's about 7,200 square feet. It's a whole floor, but I'm sort of torn between starting between 2,500 square feet and then slowly building it up as we understand as we find the perfect balance of square footage and the space leased out between desks and private offices. Yeah, and I'm hoping to open this space somewhere in the second quarter of next year. I've had conversations with the property owners, and we're pretty much I think I'm hoping to sign a lease sometime end of the year. I hope that's some good information there.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it's hoping to sign a lease when?
In end of December or early January.
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, so we actually have a really interesting opportunity there in terms of talking about scale and a strategy for how to approach that, right? And do you try to go bigger sooner or not? And so we can kind of dig into that either in this call or when you and I talk one-on-one later this week.
Awesome.
Great. All right, y'all. I think we've all been introduced. We've got definitely some stuff to talk about, so let's dive in. I'd like to start with the free trial and marketing stuff, and then we can get into a little bit about Lucas. I'm going to do my best to try to address your questions around software and printer picking, but if we don't get to it in the call, I can follow up. And Jen, I want to dive deeper into your conversation about the expansion and the LLCs, just because it's fresh, and I think we can work through it a little bit more. Yeah, okay, cool. So coming back to the free trial conversation and general marketing strategy. So it's a tricky thing especially when you're starting a new space, when you have a lot of room and you don't have a lot of customers and you want to incentivize people to show up and get in the door. And the thing that we're constantly trying to figure out is how to do that in a way that gets people in the door for one, but then also eventually gets them to want to pay you money. And it's a bit of a tricky process, and we all have to kind of get a vibe for how that works for us. But at the end of the day, what we need to do is be ultimately thinking in terms of what is going to be creating a perception of value, because there's a lot of ways we can give stuff away where it just never comes back around to us. And when that happens, it wastes our time and our money, and we want to avoid those things. And what I found is that giving stuff away for free usually does not work well in terms of converting into customers unless it's done in a very careful or very specific way, because the people who are motivated by a free trial are the kinds of people that are motivated by free stuff. And so inherently they're the kinds of folks who like getting deals and don't like paying for things. And so the tendency is that the free trial attracts the people who aren't the people who are actually the ideal customers for paying you. And that the people who do want to pay you are the kinds of people that have a very specific understanding of what they need. And if they believe that what you're offering them will fulfill that need, then they'd rather pay you today and get it done. That's the tendency that I've seen. Now, there are some exceptions to this we can play with, which I'll tell you a little bit about. But to modify, and I'm just gonna rant at you guys, and then you tell me, how this lands for you. We can probably jump from there. But what I found tends to work better is if we create some kind of a discount. Discount is different from free, and it could be generous discount, but something that still requires them to value what you are offering them and makes very clear that this is a temporary thing and that there's going to be, that the full price is coming. And so discounts, I would say, even drastic discounts, still requires them to give you their credit card and be in your system and put some skin in the game. And it also makes it easier for that to continue after the trial is over, to say, hey, you could send them an email, but you could say, look, I was charging you $50, now I'm going to charge you $300. And, you could quit if you want to, but if you don't quit, then you're here, So I'm a fan of generous discounts. And what I would say also is to consider making that something that you don't offer publicly, but something that you use as a sales tool when it's somebody that you really want. Because part of the game here is not just getting bodies in the door, but getting the right kinds of people. And I can tell you, getting the wrong kinds of people in the door, especially in the beginning, can cost you so much more money in people who are repelled by those people than the money that you get by taking the money from those people. And so what we don't want is to be giving a great deal to someone who doesn't belong there. We want to be giving great deals to people who totally have to be there because they're going to make a great culture fit for your space. And that's where you want to employ, if necessary, the discount to give them some added motivation to close the deal. And so what I like is to be able to think of it as a limited inventory of discounted space that you're willing to offer specifically for the purpose of improving the culture of your space in the early stage. And then using that when you are processing leads and talking to potential customers to identify people where maybe giving them a price break could help them decide to make the jump. All this is in the context of our bigger mission, which is to give people a reason to be a part of your space other than the renting of the space. And that ultimately, I think, in just transitioning to your other question, Tony, about ROI, if you do quality programming well, the ROI is better than everything. So, if you give me $1,000, I could spend $1,000 on Facebook ads and maybe I will get customers, or maybe I will get no customers. I don't know. I'm not an expert at Facebook ads. Maybe you could hire someone who is. I still don't know. You're basically paying on the hope that it will deliver. And unless you're very confident that it will, there's a chance that it will not go anywhere. Whereas I know that if I spend $1,000 throwing some really great happy hour events, parties, buying the beers, whatever it is, I'm going to get people to show up. They're going to have a good time. And I'm going to build my social capital in the community. And one of the things that I think is important for all of us, and I'm thinking of you, Simeon, as well in pre-launch phase, and you, Lucas, as well, is that in order to obtain financial capital, my working theories now is that you have to have social capital first. And social capital is easier to generate from your own passion and labor. And so if you bring people together in whatever context you can, or whatever context feels good for you, and they have a good time and you connect people to each other and they see you as a person who is a connector of people, then your social capital goes up and they value you as a person and as a leader. And that's something you can just do by doing it, right? And then from there, you can now turn it to financial capital to say, hey, I've been running these events. I've been connecting these people. I'm really excited for this thing I'm trying to do. Now I'm here to fundraise, or now I'm here to sell you something. I would love your help making this thing a success. And because people know you and they love you and they trust you and they appreciate you, now they want to help you to be a successful business person.
Can I ask you a question on that, Tony?
Yeah, Tony.
So with my membership, I was looking at creating events that you had to be a member to go to the events. So how do you, I guess, cross that to where, what do you think? Maybe just allow them to come to one free event to check it out, like a happy hour before they join. Maybe that's better than a free trial to the space.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that we want, is to have a thing to invite them to that provides them an ability to get to know the other people in your community and build some kind of a relationship or connection with them. Because once they feel that, they're going to want to come and be around those people more. And so what I talk about is this idea of an invitation funnel, where you either take existing programming or you design new programming, but you create something that is free or public, cheap, available, that you invite everybody to. And that's your giveaway. And you do that once a month. Maybe it's a great happy hour or whatever, not members only. But the idea is that you invite prospective members there. They meet the current members, they meet the community, they warm up. And then you warm them up by saying, okay, there's some member only stuff going on, but I can get you in on it on a trial, right? So you can free trial your programming, your members only programming. Because if people love your programming and they want to keep coming back for it, then great. Final step of the phase is you want to keep coming back, join as a member. And by the way, this is a great place to employ your super discount. So if someone showed up to your party, someone showed up to your member only event, and now they're primed, but they're not quite ready to commit, you can drop in there and say, hey, I got $100 off your first 3 months, or $200 off your first 3 months, right? Make it, dumb for them not to join, right? Because they like it and they want it and they want to be there. And at this point, we care more about getting the right people in the space than we do about making the most dollars per seat, because you're gonna have seats empty, right? And so actually, I want to come back, Tony, to another idea around the giving away of space for a period of time, which is to make a separate program, maybe labeling it a scholarship program, where you specifically are offering up some space at a drastic discount, $50 a month for a desk instead of $200 or $300, right? But it's for a charitable organization that's doing good in the world, somebody that is doing really cool stuff that's going to bring great vibes into your space. And there's an application process and stuff like that. So if you've got this much space, you're never going to sell all of it in the next 6 months, allocate a chunk of it and give it away in a way that's going to generate value for you, in terms of PR, in terms of bringing wonderful people in there that are going to really energetically improve the space, so that when somebody walks in, they don't walk into a space that's empty. They'll walk into a space where there's all these people already doing cool stuff, and that makes the party feel a little bit more bumping, right? So that's another way to allocate unused space that you're not going to use without devaluing the space that you have. So you've got a very limited program for a very specific thing. And then, you've got ample free trial stuff too. So you're priming the pump every way you can, but we're being selective about who those people are. That makes sense?
Cool. I like it.
Neat.
Good stuff.
Yay. All right. I know, Kelly, I think you were asking about this as well. Do you have any follow-on thoughts or questions?
No, I think that was really helpful. I think we still, we have seen a little bit of what you're describing about the people coming in the door. If you're giving them something for free, those people who are only looking for deals don't tend to be the ones who stick around. So that really resonated with me when you said that. It was an obvious point that I really hadn't quite put together, but I think that's sort of what we were feeling, because we were we keep getting these people in for free, and we've had results were 2 have come back as sort of continuous day pass users. They don't need us enough to be a full-time member, and they came in on a free day pass, and then we had 1 who did become a full-time member, but I think they would have done that anyway. The rest of the people, like we actually had somebody on Friday who basically was like, I wouldn't have been in here except for that it was free, and I'm probably not coming back because the next one won't be free. So it was like, well, why are we giving this away then? Because we could have made an extra like $1,000 this year, or maybe not, because maybe those people would have never come in, but it didn't seem like it was getting us anything, at least having that be the entry point. So yeah, so that particular point really resonated with us, and I do think we need to kind of up our socializing and networking, because the people who have become members have seen the greater value in the connections with us or with the other members, and that's why they've joined. So to the extent we can focus on that, I think that is where we need to be putting our efforts.
Yeah, and there's value in giving stuff away. It's just it's going to be more in the awareness building that, you know, somebody who came there for free now knows you exist and will speak positively of you. It's just that they're probably not going to be the one who's actually going to be your customer. They could become.
Yeah, and I guess that was part of what we were trying to balance. We're like, well, is it still worth it to get those people who may never become members to use it for a day, so that they do then later tell people about it, and maybe they'll hit that person that wants to become a member, and they wouldn't have found out about us otherwise, and we have the seats, so why not? But I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I think it helps if you can offer something that's cheap or free that doesn't directly devalue the main core thing that you have to be creating a perception of value in. And so, you know, a programming or even specific co-working programming, you know, if you're running a work sprint, you can make the work sprint free, or you can make that super cheap, or, you know, offer people free day passes for the work sprint, something like that. Because it's a specific thing happening in your space and it's not the value of the space itself. Because even when if I hear somebody saying I'm offering a free trial, what I'm hearing is I'm trying to sell a space and I'm struggling to, and so I have to give it away, and that makes me not particularly excited to want to pay you for it. So we want to try to stay away from that perception if we are doing something a little bit more you know, specific like that program. It helps. Yeah,
that makes sense.
And so on Simeon's side, with trying to figure out what size space to take on, I'll tell you that this also kind of is adjacent because of thinking in terms of your sales process and the culture building process that you're going to undertake. So when you're throwing a party, if you're going to have, you know, if you're going to have 20 people show up to your party, you don't want to book a ballroom that's big enough for 1,000 people, because it's going to feel like the party is a huge failure. But if you do it, if you throw a party and you know 20 people are going to come, and you do it in your apartment that only really has room for like 10, then people are going to be like, wow, this party is a huge success. I can barely even get in the door, right? So it's the same 20 people, but in one case, people see it as a success and then also see a mandate for a bigger venue. So if you throw a party at your apartment and there's only room for 10 and 20 people want in, everyone's going to say, hey, we got to get a bigger place for our parties. And now you've got people primed for the idea of a bigger space. Whereas, you know, if you already have a larger space, you've made this assertion that what you're doing deserves it, when the response from the people you're dealing with has not reinforced that fact yet. And so that you could take to say, start as small as you can and grow from there, which you can totally do. What I will say, though, is that if you are in a position where you found, for example, like a building you really love, and you want to be able to grow into it, maybe you have a tremendous support network already. I don't know you that well yet, so we're still figuring this out. But if you anticipate you're going to grow quickly, then what you can do is sign a larger space with the explicit understanding that in the course of doing so, part of your plan is going to be find somebody to sublet a big chunk of it. And so, you know, if you know that you've only got, you know, let's say you got 7,500 square feet, maybe you take 2,500 and you find someone else to lease out the other 5,000 for the next 6 to 12 months, right? And so you control the space, but you don't have to worry about renting it, because renting out desks and filling up co-working for 7,500 feet is a lot scarier than doing it for 2,500 feet. So like that's one way to approach the bigger space that's like more risk averse. Does that make sense? Oh no, you're not with us anymore. Oh. I'm gonna go with yes, that made sense. Maybe you'll catch the video afterward. Yeah, so let's get back to what else have we got that we need to talk about. Jen, let's talk about your situation with the LLCs. So it makes sense on paper, holding company, individual LLCs for each location. Minimizes your liability. If something goes wrong in one space, it doesn't kill the other space. Makes sense, right? But it adds significant accounting overhead to you. And so this is your concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a sense of the extent of the overhead that is going to be required, or is it more like a vibe that you have from the idea of running 3 LLCs?
I think it's more of a vibe. So what you just said is exactly what everyone else told me. Because I happened to talk to Benjamin on the phone on the Tuesday of Juicy, and after that I was like breathing into a paper bag, and so I started asking a bunch of other people that were there, hey, does this sound right? And like to a person, they all said yes, that's correct. For the reasons you just said, that if something happens at one, it doesn't affect all the other. So I guess 2 questions with that. Number one, how much protection does it actually give me if there's also a holding company? All right, so somebody slips and falls here at the Green Bay Road location.
Yep.
They can still sue Dayhouse Green Bay Road LLC, but also Dayhouse Inc., I would think. And maybe it's just the likelihood that the judge is going to throw that out against Dayhouse Inc. I don't know. So that's number one. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My understanding is that it's just an additional layer of protection. And
Okay.
if, for example, both are under the same LLC and one of them goes down, then they're both going down for sure. Right. And so you've got separate books, and like, the person who is suing you doesn't have any claim against your other LLC that they have no relationship to. And so the bank should be that the bank account of that other company is protected from liability. They're not exposed because they're not related to it. Even like, I think the issue is that if you go after the holding company by virtue of the language that you use for it, it has nothing. There's no money in the holding company. There's nothing there. There's nothing to sue. And so this down here, if this gets sued, there's nothing to sue up here because it's meaningless. There's no money up here, and this stays safe. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, so here's what I am freaking out about with this scenario. As I said, this new location is intended to be an annex. We were going to share a lot of resources, one of them being staffing. Also marketing. And then, marketing, obviously, that would be shared as we grow and add more locations. There'll be local level marketing and then, top level marketing. So if there's no money coming into the holding company, I'm just seeing a scenario where like I have to say, okay, Susie spent 3.75 hours at Green Bay Road, and then she spent 4.25 at St. John's Avenue, and now she's getting 2 different paychecks. Oh, holy shit, I don't.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
That sounds awful.
So I'm pretty sure that that's not how it works. And I personally don't know how it works. However, that's like, look, like, Benjamin is a consultant. If being on the phone with him made you more stressed and not less, then he needs to do his job and go get you in the other direction, right? So like,
I think that's what's happening later today.
What's that?
I think that's what's happening later today.
Okay, good. So we'll talk about it. You can come to them and just say, look, that made me more stressed, not less. Now what, right? and let them help, work through that with you. But I would say that just in general, what I'm hearing is something around your desire to have a comfort with what it is that you're building in the bigger picture.
Mhm.
And I know that you want to build something bigger, and building something bigger, there are times when it means you have to be a little top heavy in terms of your infrastructure. So like right now, does it really make sense for you to be running 3 LLCs? Not really. It doesn't really, like it's too much. Like you could just sign it with your current LLC, no big deal. But if we're thinking big picture about you having 100 locations all over the world, are we laying the foundation for that? Right? And I don't know the answer. I don't know exactly legally how those things get structured, but there's probably a good chance that that's true, that there is something along those lines, right? And so that's what I would be, most thinking about. Then you get to the next level of, well, yes, I do want to build a global thing, but does it make sense for me to invest in this level of infrastructure now? And the answer to that can still be no. So you
Mhm.
could say, you know what? At the end of the day, this is still too much. I'm just going to sign the lease on this space with my current LLC, knowing that it's a bit of a risk, but it's a calculated one. And you're going to buy yourself some time to get to the point where you can tackle this in a more correct way later. And it could mean that one day you transfer the lease of your second space to a new LLC and a new holding company, which you can totally do. Happens all the time. You go to your landlord, you say, hey, I'm transferring from here to here. I need your permission. They say, sure, done, right? So you don't have to do it now. But I think the missing critical piece is that you don't know. You don't know what you're up against here. How much is this going to cost? How much more work is it going to be? And not knowing is the problem, right? And so what I would want to find out from Deco or from your lawyer or from an accountant that you're friendly with, somebody, is to say, what is the overhead like for managing a business like this? Like how much more, what am I going to have to do? What am I going to have to spend? Who am I going to have to pay to do what? Like, give me the full list. And somebody like Deco should be able to just tell you that. You might have to pay them for it, but like they should be able to tell you, look, this is exactly what is going to happen, right? And if you know, actually, this is super easy because everyone does it all the time and the overhead's really low. You just have to spend a couple $1,000s up front and then it's all set up and it's done. And you spend a little bit more on your accountant every year than you normally do, but like that's it. You know exactly how much it costs. It doesn't seem that bad. Fine. If it's like, whoa, actually, this is starting to sound really scary and complicated and expensive, then you know that too, and you can make a decision accordingly. But I think you just need the information at this point.
Okay. I think it's just growing pains because it is going to have to happen eventually. And someone did give me the idea of like, well, maybe for the first 6 months, you don't do it that way, like what you just said. Because I DIY so many things right now. Like I do my own bookkeeping because I weirdly enjoy bookkeeping. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So get the information, and then if you're willing to do the growing pain now, then great. If not, you'll probably be fine.
Okay.
And we're talking about risk, and there's the risk of a lawsuit taking down your whole business, which is very low but non-zero. And there's the risk of investing too much in infrastructure that you don't need now, when you need to be focusing on getting customers and getting the business done. And I think to some degree, I'm not advocating for one side or the other here at all, but there are times when you are in a dangerous place as far as risk factors for your business because you're trying to get it alive. And so like when we're talking about risk management, like there's always the risk of what happens if I get sick and I can't work for a long time, and like there's a good stretch of time when that means the business probably goes out of business, or like something has to, something is going to have to roll back to account for that fact. Right. So there's periods of varying degrees of risk. And in the early stages, there's a fair bit of that going around, but we're doing this in the hopes that there isn't a tragedy and that we're able to survive this period of incubation up to the point where it becomes a more sustainable entity. And, so there's going to be some risk involved during that time. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
We're lining them up and knocking them down today.
Can I just chime in for a second on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Kelly. So I'm going to agree with what Tony said, but I do sometimes feel like advisors, and I am one to my clients at times, are going to tell you the scariest version of whatever could happen, especially attorneys. That's like what we're made to do. It doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. And some of it is you have to take the advice from the various parties and then weigh it yourself and not take it at face value always. Because or ask the hard questions and say, like, really, what is the risk here? Or, do you actually know of this ever having happened? Or, and if you're, and again, kind of along those lines of what it sounds like some people told you, one option is just going forward and having it under the same LLC and then switching it later once you decide you want to continue growing. But maybe in this initial phase, maybe it is just keeping it all together because that's what's easier and you could focus on your actual business. But I would suggest, and I don't know these consultants, I know Tony does, and maybe they connect you with this, but is reaching out on the insurance side and finding out what your insurer will cover, because they may actually require you to have a separate LLC, or you might have to switch insurance companies, so then it might not be as much of a choice. So at least in my mind, that would be kind of where I would start, because once you know what the parameters of what you can get insurance on, then it will, I think, help clarify at least a little bit of direction. Because if they're willing to insure this separate location under the same organizational structure, then you still have that option. If they're not willing to insure it, they want it to be a single member LLC, or a single purpose entity that's separate, then that also will give you some direction.
What complicates this, and I forgot to tell you guys this, my current building is on a straight up lease, traditional lease. The second building is going to be a management agreement with my landlord, where he essentially is paying me. There's no capital or anything like that. How that's going to work from a banking standpoint. But that does add a layer of complexity.
Yeah. So just make sure that gets communicated when you're asking people the implications of this. It could be that shields you from liability and therefore this isn't a problem.
Yeah. Or
it doesn't. And it still is a thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. I'm here to tell you the truth. That's all I'm going to do what I got. I'm not going to pretend to know something I don't.
I've got something real quick, Jen. So I just recently went through. So I've been in business 20 years now, and I've done like flip properties and rental properties all under one entity. And it's created complications now to where, anyway, I won't go into it, but basically what it comes down to is that I didn't protect myself by separating them, number one. And number two, I wasn't really accurately looking at my P&L and my reports correctly because I had everything in one entity. So just my 2 cents is, if you're going to set it up, I would set it up separately for liability reasons, number one. And number two, I would have the books completely separate so that you know whether each entity or each space is making money or not. Because when I had everything, together, I could see that I was making money from a big picture standpoint. But then when I started digging into it, it was like, holy shit, this wasn't making as much money as I thought. It was being masked because this entity was bringing in, or this part of the business was bringing in a lot more money than I realized it was covering something that wasn't making quite as much money as I thought. So anyway, that's just my two cents and my experience with having separate things that are going on that, I put into one entity.
It's a great point, Tony, that even if, Jen, you're paying the same staff, the same amount for one check from one company, accounting for how much of their labor is going to one space or the other as an internal practice will be important for you to assess the profitability of your different endeavors, right? So
to an extent, although I'm almost looking at the income from this other place just almost as a line item, because we're getting the flat fee from my landlord for the management fee, and then 15% on the office rentals, because this new place is all offices, no co-working, no events, none of that.
But like Tony said, what kind of labor is being spent on that line item is kind of what you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And is it worth having it? If you're spending more labor than you think, and it's not being tracked, then you just don't know, right?
So yeah, I mean, it's something you don't have to track, right? Like there's so much in business. It's so important for so many things we talk about. There's the by the book way you're supposed to do it. And then there's the reality that you have limited time and energy. So if, for example, Kelly goes out, if Jessica goes out and buys a case of toilet paper once a month from Costco and goes to both locations and fills up the toilet paper, and then at the end of the month or end of the year, you realize you spent way too much money on toilet paper than you thought you would, but you have no idea how many toilet rolls you put in one space or the other space, then you don't know which space is the one that's the problem. Now, is that a realistic scenario? Do you have to count the number of toilet rolls you put in one building or the other when, no, but if you do, then you'll have better equipment to understand later, where your money's going and whether one space is profitable or not versus the other.
Yeah, but my landlord's paying for the toilet paper.
It's just.
I know it's
Yeah.
good.
So what I'm trying to say is that the toilet paper is an allegory for other things. It's meant to symbolize. So again, like, is it going to matter for you, Jen? I don't know. I don't know how much labor you're going to invest in selling and managing this other space. So maybe it's not enough for it to matter. In theory, it definitely does matter. And maybe in practice. And again, it's something you don't have to do correctly right away, but it helps if you can, even if it's back of the envelope. If you have a monthly staff meeting, you just say, hey, how much time did you spend working on this versus that percentage wise the last month or the last week, or whatever it is, just so you have a vibe on it. You want to try to iron out blind spots wherever possible. And it could be that you just don't deal with this until you see a problem and then you decide to start dealing with it, so yeah.
All right, thanks.
Let us know how it goes with your call. Good luck.
Thank you. I will.
So Lucas had asked about software and printer and things like that. Lucas, I'll tell you real quick my general 1, 2, 3 on the software, which is, first of all, knowing that no software is perfect. There's like 40 different platforms and none of them is exactly the perfect one for everybody, but you will probably find one that works well enough for you. So what you want to do is research, get a lay of the land, Google for the big bodacious list of co-working software that my friend Hector created, and go through it all. Find the software, all the different kinds, like put in a fair bit of time and energy. Unfortunately, this is something I don't have a super easy shortcut for you on. You just got to invest the time to know that you're making the right decision because it's a consequential one. Narrow it to 3 or so finalists that you think all could be the winner. Go through the demo call with them, get a vibe with them, and then pick one and then stick with it, and recognize that the one that you pick is not going to be perfect. Something about it's going to drive you absolutely insane, and design your business processes around that weakness rather than decide to start over again unless you're absolutely certain you made the wrong decision, because switching is painful. And you can always check with us, so I could tell you, Nexodus, I know lots of people that use it that love it. I know some people that use it and hate it. And if you message the group, you can find other people who are using it and get their tips.
Yes, sounds good, Tony. Thanks for the tips.
Yeah, you got it. I'll tell you off the top of my head, Office R&D is definitely one of the common ones. Satellite Desk Works, Proximity, and Cobot. Those are some of the more mainstream ones. Anybody else here
Okay.
using something else?
I
Jen,
ended up not using one. I demoed about, I guess, 3 of the mainstream ones, and I demoed 2 that were like basically made for people who have studios. They didn't really do what I needed, and so the local co-working space here said, "Hey, just using Team Up Calendar, which is what I use, instead of doing all this fancy, sophisticated stuff." So I found a solution that I think will be good for me for 4 or 5 months as I launch, and then in 4 or 5 months I can reevaluate because I'll have a better idea of what I really need. So that's ended up working well for me. I can't hear you, Tony.
got it. Cool. Jen, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Sorry, I've got a really bad setup today, so I'm like Blair Witching my way through this.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Yeah, Proximity. Did you mention that one?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I looked at all of them. I had a spreadsheet that drove me mad. And yeah, in the end, we decided to go with the one that sucked the least, which at the time was Proximity. A lot of people are recommending Jelly Switch. That's a new one too. And then some people really like Satellite Desk Works.
Cool.
And I'll just chime in that we started with Nexodus, switched pretty quickly to Cobot, and then after about 6 months switched to Proximity. So we are now at Proximity, which is working the best of those 3 for us and what we need and how we use it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's for everybody.
There you go. Any printer recommendations? Anybody have anything that works well for them?
We just have a standard HP printer, and it's on the honor system. And so far, that's working okay. I mean, we only have 30 members, so it's manageable. Yeah. We haven't like gone to Easy Print or anything like that.
Got it. Cool. That's what I had for me too. I had 2 of them, 2 HP all-in-ones with the scan and everything. And having 2 was helpful because one would break. So it's always nice to be able to not immediately have to fix the printer. So yeah, we actually had 3 printers for a while. We had like a separate different branded one that maybe I think was like a laser that was more efficient on the black and white. So having some backups doesn't hurt.
Jen, I'm curious at how much people use your printer, because we have found that like it's hard. Ours is hardly ever used. So I'm wondering if they're kind of going by the wayside these days.
I hope so.
I would say it gets used a few times a day, not very much.
Okay. Ours is
But
like once every 2 weeks, but we don't have as many members. So that's also why I was curious at what you're.
Okay. No, we definitely need it. We definitely need it. And it would be missed if we didn't have it. But yeah, not, yeah, but a lot of people just don't print stuff these days.
Cool. Final thing before we go. All right. Gotcha, Lucas. All good. Jen, any final major takeaways from Juicy Canada aside from getting freaked out on multiple?
That was my big takeaway. Oh, let's see. Let me look at my notes.
As you know,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What's that?
As you know, I'm excited. Yeah.
Okay, Tony, go.
I'm excited about the third wave. This idea of co-working spaces that understand the business and the community side taking charge, and I'm excited at the idea that we can coordinate our efforts a little bit better. A personal takeaway is that I want to do more speaking and maybe do more traveling and speaking. So I'll be thinking about that for potentially for 2020. And what else?
I had a lot of notes around that as well, because one of the things that we're trying to do better at is when we give a tour is to talk more about the community aspect with using language that that resonates with our prospective members. So I took a lot of notes on that. So we're going to come up with a script that that's funny. Jessica's asking for the document that I'm reading from right now. Sorry. Yeah, because I think that that's something that we could do better with. Oh, I like this takeaway from, oh my God, what's his name? The guy who gave the talk about coaching. His name just flew out of my head. Anyway, he did a really great session, and he said that you should put time on your calendar for deep work with no distractions. So like schedule that every day if possible. And that's something I'm going to try to do.
Yes, absolutely. It's so necessary. Big fan of it. Good stuff. Yeah, I've got a ton more takeaways. I think my main one now is just dig through all of it. So we can discuss it more next week as things percolate.
And y'all should come to Juicy USA because it's awesome.
Seattle, April 20th. Put it on your calendar. As soon as I get a coupon, I'll pass it to you. Awesome. All right. Great chat and efficient meeting. We knocked off everything. Wow. Nice work, team. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you in a week. Keep up the great work.
Bye.